And just like that, the first season of Star Wars Resistance is done. Let's get chatting.
How you get so big that you food of this kind?
My friends, it's been a long and yet short road. It feels like just yesterday the series got announced. By just yesterday, of course, that was April, and it wasn't until August that we got any information on the show at all when it started in October. If you watched our early stuff on that show, you know that we here were optimistic about the show, weren't expecting to love it, but knew that it was going to be something that we were at least going to check out. Now, here in March, almost a year later since the show came into our lives, still on the cusp of getting over the fact that Rebels ended, the first season is done, and it's felt like a whirlwind. I've absolutely loved this series. I've watched it grow faster than any of the past Star Wars Lucasfilm animation shows prior. I'm really excited to talk to you about this finale. That said, this is going to be a spoiler review. This is a massive spoiler warning. Please don't watch this review until you've watched the episode. With that, let's get into No Escape Part 2. While the episode might be called No Escape, as it turns out, there is definitely escape. A large escape. A really, really cool escape. This episode just had everything. It had emotional moments, it had relationship turning points, we laughed, we cried, we mourned, we turned that anger into something greater. There was calm, quiet moments, there was big, large-scale, movie-quality battles. I don't know how they fit so much into just 22 minutes. The opening really caught me off guard because I thought we had gone through all of the pain of Hosnian Prime last week, but instead they opened it once again with us watching Kaz's homeworld get destroyed. Now, this is probably for the best since they did air the episodes separately. This is better than a classic previously on Star Wars Resistance type scene, and in fact, I wonder if these episodes were ever aired together, if this might have been altered or edited in some way. But with this part of the scene, we got to see more of what I really wanted to see last week and what I knew was coming this week, which was Kaz's reaction and Tora's reaction to Kaz's reaction. Tora is absolutely correct. They have to keep going, they have to keep moving, they can't stop at this point. Kaz is understandably upset, but it's also such a mind-blowing thing that just happened. They are way too young to have witnessed Alderaan, and while they probably would have heard about it, it wouldn't have been a thing that's necessarily on their minds all the time. Even still, and I understand that a lot of people who have been watching the sequel trilogy don't necessarily feel this way, but Alderaan was one planet, and that's horrible, and that's awful, and Alderaan symbolized so much peace, but the Hosnian Prime was a whole system. This is several planets. Starkiller Base was proving to be just this powerful. And for Kaz, not only to lose his family, but to realize that he was chasing down this weapon the entire season and didn't get to figure it out in time, there could be this overwhelming weight of guilt that comes upon him too. So rather than really taking the time to mourn in this moment, he has to focus that energy and channel it into at least protecting the people of the Colossus, because that's something he can actually do. I liked that the solution to getting rid of the First Order was to basically use their quarantine against them. Kaz and Tora run through the halls and trick stormtroopers into going into hallways so they can shoot them out into the water. Considering that was Niku's plan, that was actually pretty dark, because we actually see some of the stormtroopers get nibbled up by the local fishes. But the reason why this plan really worked at all is because the First Order had the whole station on quarantine. They could flood the hallways because most of the people who are on the Colossus, like Flix and Orca, who we saw last week, they're locked up in their own individual quarters. So they really had the ability to kind of play around with these hallways. If the First Order had kind of let people be and go about their days, then this would have been a much harder strategy because innocent people could have gotten hurt. Now, of course, there's no way to know that they actually got every single stormtrooper off the Colossus, but they definitely got the vast majority, so even if there's a couple around, they should be able to handle that themselves. But before all this, Kaz and Tora rescue Yeager and Doza, so they can kind of be a part of the plan as well. This was a very touching scene because Kaz has to explain to Yeager that Hosnian Prime and the Hosnian system has been destroyed. Yeager is definitely old enough to have remembered Alderaan personally, and having fought in the rebellion, he would know what this type of thing means. So it was nice that Yeager just believes Kaz. Kaz doesn't have to explain to him how this is possible. And it's this really deep moment between the two of them. The one thing I kind of wish they would have hit on here is that Tora got her father back. She gets to see her dad again, embrace her dad again, just as Kaz is feeling like he has lost his family. But an emotional beat like that would have kind of hurt the pacing, so I can understand why they didn't. I do hope that that's something they get into in the second season. After resecuring Doza's office on the Colossus and flooding out the hallways of all stormtroopers, the team comes back together to try to rescue Tam. Yeager has overheard that they're taking Tam away to the First Order, even though she hasn't really agreed to the offer yet, and he gets Kaz involved, and so you have Tora and Kaz up on a balcony, Yeager kind of off to the side, and they're trying to plead with Tam for her to not join the First Order. Now, because you saw the episode, Tam accepts the offer. Now, when she accepts the offer, it's because the First Order has started to shoot at her friends, and her friends aren't backing down, and her friends are trying to tell her what the First Order is really like, but they've been set up to be liars. It's a situation where I really don't blame Tam. She's mad, there's gunfire, so she's going to shelter from the gunfire and shelter from the people she's mad at, and she doesn't know about Starkiller Base. There's no way the First Order let her know about that, and it was something that Kaz and Yeager didn't bring up, which is unfortunate, but I am at least relieved to know that she made that decision not knowing about the billions who just died. And again, I hope that this is a plotline that gets taken into the second season. Maybe even her realizing that she made the wrong decision just before some of that infamous stormtrooper brainwashing stuff we've heard so much about gets involved. I hope that a good portion of the second season involves the rescue of Tam and not that she just becomes a villain now. From a story perspective, I'm okay with her being a villain for a little while, but I just don't want her to stay there because, as we all know, Star Wars is ultimately about redemption. That said, it's probable that Yeager has kind of written Tam off, at least in the short run. He says the "she made her choice" line. Now, whether or not he really meant that because they need to focus on the task at hand, or because he's going to be hurt and broken after the fact because of this, I don't know. But I do know that the very last line of the episode was Kaz making an indirect reference to Tam. So I do not think Kaz is going to let this one go. And then the big moment of the episode, the point where the Colossus rises out of the water. This was some of, if not the best animation I have seen in this series. It was stunning. Their water effects have always been one of the stronger points of the show in general, and the ships as well, so you just are combining ships and water to create this amazing thing. The ship is slowly rising and going into the clouds, and then there's this big battle, and man, that battle was probably my favorite moment in the series so far. And really it's because that battle was a big battle. It was a long battle. No shade on any of the kind of confrontations we've seen in the show prior, but they've all been skirmishes. They've all been scraps. They've all been, okay, we have to get away from this person or we have to run away, and it's a small segment of the episode. This was a large chunk of the episode, and because of it, the battle itself could have a story. It started just as our heroes got to their fighters, trying to go out and protect the Colossus, but the TIE fighters have moved in, and then Hype and Aunt Z show up. So that's your first kind of huzzah, the tide is turning moment. From there, the heroes get out into the air, and they're fighting, and it's amazing because we're seeing the aces, we're seeing Kaz, we're seeing Yeager, we're seeing Hype and Z and all of these TIE fighters, and all of the stuff is going on, but once again, we can see that our friends are outmatched. They're flying amazing and they're doing great things, but there's just too many TIE fighters. And so again, the tide kind of turns back. And from there, the pirates show up. And what a moment that was. It was teased at the end of the descent, of course, but it was great to see it happen. It was great to see Sonara come back. It was great to see Kaz's belief in Sonara turn into something and to show that she can kind of come back and be a part of this bigger picture. There are two very interesting dynamics to the pirates, though, that I find very interesting. Is one, when they come back, it appears like Sonara's in charge. We see her on the bow doing the pointing. We see her at the end in the hangar. And at first I thought maybe they had a mutiny and kicked Kragan out. But then at the shot of all the pirates at the end, you can clearly see Kragan is there. So I really want to know what that story was. Is he so mad at the First Order that he's willing to follow Sonara into battle to help the Colossus? Or did he really get removed from power, but he's still kind of there? either way, I think that's a great plot line. But the second thing I find interesting is that the pirates go with the Colossus. Yeah, they probably would have died if they hadn't, but it's interesting to me that the Colossus just accepts the pirates without question. They just kind of let them fly in and go away. And I really kind of wonder if that's going to lead to tension on the Colossus, because I mean, the pirates did attack and potentially kill several members of this ship, albeit they were doing it at the direction of the First Order, but they didn't really seem all that sad about it. So I'm kind of interested to see where it goes from there. But again, Star Wars is ultimately about redemption. Right, JJ? Another really fun thing about this battle is it's just always great to see Kaz in his element. He's gotten better at the spying, he's gotten better at the sneaking around, he's gotten better at the saving people and all of that sort of stuff, but in a cockpit is really where he's happiest. And we got to see him finally go to toe with the Red Baron von Reg, actually come and save Yeager's life, and it was this really great moment. Seeing Kaz win the day in the air was really, really satisfying to me, and it really kind of cements that he is a good pilot. What Poe saw in him was real. It wasn't Poe building him up unfairly. It's Kaz has either not been able to fly or he's been in a ship that can't fly super well. And it was good to see him really doing what he does best. And then at the end we get Niku's coordinates. So Kaz says that they're going to the planet of Dakar. Dakar is the resistance base that we see at the end of The Force Awakens and at the very beginning of The Last Jedi. So it's a little nerve-wracking to say he wants to go to a base that we know is about to come under attack, as we see at the beginning of The Last Jedi. But then as it turns out, Niku didn't even put in the right coordinates, which is great because technically you could fly right through a star or go get too close to a supernova, as Han Solo would say. So who knows really where they're going to end up, but I thought that was a pretty good moment at the end, especially because we've been seeing Niku, like engineering Niku, who had found a way to sink the station and raise the station and get the station back up in the air, and he was doing all these great things, and at the end of the day the thing he can't do is enter coordinates. It just felt like a very, very Niku moment. But it also leads to a lot of speculation of where they could end up in Season 2. So Niku says that they're either going to be not too far away from Dakar or uncomprehensibly far away. In the event that it's actually the first one, like what if they actually are close to Dakar but not? I think it could be interesting if they get there just as the attack in The Last Jedi is happening, and that maybe they could be tailing the Supremacy as it chases the Raddus all across the storyline of that film, and then maybe after the Millennium Falcon leaves Crate that they could rendezvous with them. That's a possibility. But if it's what's more likely, that they just end up somewhere way out there, who knows? It could really be anything. I mean, it could be Takodana, it could be Batu, it could be a planet we saw in Solo. It could end up just being the middle of space and there's not even a planet there. Regardless of that, it's just going to depend on what kind of story they want to tell in the second season. To me, a large part of what the second season is going to be is as Leia and Rey try to rebuild the Resistance and rebuild the Republic, they're going to meet up at some point. It's just a question of when and where and what the circumstances are. A quick point of address for those of you who are a little bit more canonically minded, perhaps. You might remember the line at the end of The Descent 2 episodes ago where Leia says to Kaz, "I'm sending you the coordinates to our next base." And then in this episode, Kaz is saying, "We're going to go to Dakar. I have the coordinates to Dakar." And that seems a little strange because the Resistance would have been on Dakar, so why would Leia say, "I'm sending you to our next base," instead of saying, "I'm sending you to our current base"? That's one of those things that sounds like it's a contradiction, but I'm not sure it really is. Leia would have sent the coordinates to the next base, presumably also would have sent the coordinates to Dakar, or Kaz would know that they're around Dakar. I mean, he says in the episode that it's the home of the Resistance, so it's possible that Kaz wants to go there, thinking that the Resistance will still be there, and if they're not at Dakar, then they just simply go on to the next coordinates. I don't think that's that big of a deal. It was something that I noticed when I watched the episode, and when I go to, like, my main peeps that I talked to about the show right after, it was something they had noticed as well. I just don't think it's as glaring of an error. I just think it's a case of Kaz's motivations and, like, step logic isn't quite what we would have assumed it was, if that makes sense. I will also say that the way the Colossus flies surprised me. I was a little bit confused. When I'd been seeing the theories going around that the Colossus was a spaceship, I thought it looked like a Star Destroyer pointed down into the water, so I thought it was gonna like come up out of the water and turn and fly and look like the shape of a Star Destroyer, and instead it was just this long vertical ship. It reminded me a lot of Dryden Voss's ship from Solo, only much, much bigger, so I kind of wonder if it's not like a bigger military version of that kind of ship, but the actual flying design of it was really cool. But I gotta say, that's really my thoughts on the episode right now. I'm sure I can talk about it more, but at this point I just really want to hear from you guys and see what you have to say. If you're watching this review the week that it was published, this week Wednesday, we will be doing a discussion, a live discussion on our regular streamcast on this channel, so keep an eye out here. We'll put the thing up so you can click on the reminder and that sort of thing. We'd love to come and have you guys talk to us about the whole season, start to finish, with us there. I also want to give a big shout out to some of my fellow content creators. There were several of us that were all doing weekly reviews, and I felt like, you know, I'd go over to their videos and some of them would come to our videos, and it was kind of this strange reviewer community that I was a part of. Obviously, there are a lot of other channels that did reviews. I think the flagship review was, of course, from Star Wars Explained, but I'd really like to do a shout out to I'd Do It All Day, Skynobi, John Barry 555, Starrapter, and Star Wars Speculation, because I've been watching your guys' reviews every week. You guys have watched at least some of my reviews as the week has gone by, and it means a lot to me that we all got to kind of all do the same thing, and it was fun looking forward to every week, seeing what you guys were going to say, and then having you guys come see what I had to say. And this kind of circle of content creation was really awesome. So thank you guys for doing what you do and for being here for what I do. But with that, please check us out on all the socials. Make sure you keep it here. We will have your Season 2 news as it comes out. I'm actually going to Star Wars Celebration, so I will be letting you guys know what I see. Hopefully I can get into the Resistance panel. And keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.